William takes on the responsibilities for the Duchy of Cornwall. Catherine beside him, our new Prince and Princess of Wales, continue to inspire and lead our national conversations, helping to bring the marginal to the centre ground.
No one could have predicted this, but King Charles has just dropped an earth-shattering bombshell. He's officially abdicating the throne. The announcement stunned the entire world, leaving everyone questioning if it was some royal stunt, a slip, or just an outrageous rumour. It seemed too shocking to be real.
Buckingham Palace announced the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II.
For over 7 decades, Charles had waited patiently, his eyes always on the crown, prepared to take over from his mother. Yet, when the moment finally arrived, he stunned the nation by stepping aside, officially naming William and Catherine as the nation's future rulers. What could have happened behind the closed doors of Buckingham Palace that led to this unbelievable decision? Keep watching as we reveal the untold story behind King Charles's abdication. In his final address to the nation, the king declared with undeniable certainty,
Today, Britain's Princess Kate is in the hospital where she's recovering from abdominal surgery.
"I'm abdicating," words that sent shockwaves across the faces of everyone glued to their screens in sheer disbelief. Viewers could hardly believe it, but they heard it with their own ears. Charles had ascended the throne in September 2022, shortly after the death of his beloved mother, Queen Elizabeth II, who had ruled from the age of 25 until she passed at 96. Queen Elizabeth was the longest-serving monarch in British history, holding power with unmatched dignity, compassion, and unwavering strength until her final moments. Even when frail, she attended to her royal duties with remarkable grace and determination, never missing a beat. Charles and Camilla had waited patiently for decades, longing for the moment the crown would finally pass to them. Charles didn't take it until he was 73, after an extraordinary 71 years of waiting, a wait longer than anyone could imagine. Becoming king at such an advanced age was extraordinary, yet many believed his long wait was more than just timing. It was a form of karmic justice for the pain caused to Princess Diana. Some even whispered it was fate's way of forcing Charles and Camilla to face the consequences of their past actions. But what was worse than the long wait wasn't simply the delay itself. It was what followed barely 2 years after he finally became king, and no one could have prepared for the chaos, controversy, and scrutiny that erupted immediately after his ascension. A shocking series of misfortunes began to hit the royal family, from unexpected health scares to political tensions and scandals that almost tore the monarchy apart. Many whispered that Princess Diana's spirit still lingered, restless and watchful inside Buckingham Palace, seemingly ready to haunt King Charles's reign. But how much of this is true? Keep watching, because the story is only just beginning. In January 2024, barely 4 months after King Charles III's coronation, Buckingham Palace stunned the public by announcing that the king had been diagnosed with a benign condition and was scheduled for a procedure, one said to be common for thousands of men each year. At first, the announcement was vague, leaving the public wondering if the palace was trying to hide the real story. Eventually, it became clear that King Charles was receiving treatment for an enlarged prostate. Reports suggested that the public might never have known about his condition if not for the complications that followed, which forced him to leave Buckingham Palace temporarily. As questions mounted about his sudden absence, the palace had no choice but to make the situation public. Alongside this revelation, it was added that King Charles would step back from his public duties to focus on his health, since the nation's welfare always comes first. After all, only a healthy king could lead a strong kingdom. The announcement shocked many, especially since his reign had only just begun. Support poured in from the public, sympathy, prayers, and well wishes, hoping to see him return to full strength. Naturally, with King Charles stepping away for a while, the reins of power began to shift to Prince William, the heir to the throne, who was expected to carry on his father's duties and maintain the family's public presence. However, an unexpected twist struck. Prince William couldn't fully step into his father's role because his wife, Princess Catherine, was also facing serious health challenges. On the very same day King Charles's diagnosis became public, Kensington Palace announced that Catherine had undergone abdominal surgery and was in recovery. William, known for being a deeply devoted husband and father, chose to remain by her side during that difficult period, refusing to leave her even for the kingdom's pressing matters. His decision meant he couldn't take on all the heavy responsibilities of leadership while his wife was unwell. This left much of the royal workload to fall on Princess Anne and Queen Camilla, who were the two most senior and active members of the royal family at the time. Prince William continued to handle what duties he could while staying close to his family, constantly balancing his royal commitments with his private worries and fears for those he loved most. But while the world prayed for King Charles's recovery, another shocking blow came just weeks later. In February 2024, barely a month after the first health scare, Buckingham Palace released a statement that stunned the globe. King Charles had been diagnosed with cancer. The news hit like a bombshell. Speculation spread like wildfire. Many began to fear that this could mark the beginning of the end of Charles's reign. Wasn't it heartbreaking that a man who had waited over 70 years for the throne now faced such a devastating health battle less than 2 years into his rule? Though the palace didn't disclose the exact type of cancer, they revealed it was discovered during medical checks related to his prostate treatment. The statement also confirmed that the king had already begun treatment but intended to continue handling state business and signing official documents as usual. This made it clear to the public that King Charles had no intention of surrendering his position as long as he could still lift a pen or sign his name. He would remain their king, commanding loyalty and respect, while messages of support poured in from across the globe. Even Prince Harry reportedly flew in from California, worried he might have only limited time left with his father. Meanwhile, Prince William once again stepped forward to shoulder more of the monarchy's day-to-day responsibilities. But before long, another devastating blow hit the royal family, forcing the future king to step back from his growing duties. In March 2024, Prince William's wife, Catherine Middleton, was also diagnosed with cancer, though the exact type was not disclosed. The news stunned the nation. Coming just weeks after King Charles's diagnosis, it left the royal household shaken to its core. Two of the most senior members of the royal family now faced serious, life-altering health battles. Catherine's diagnosis affected her and her family both physically and emotionally, especially Prince William. He struggled to focus on royal duties, his mind constantly returning to Catherine at home. Catherine withdrew from public life to concentrate on her recovery, and William took time away to support her and their children, ensuring family came first while facing these unprecedented challenges together. For the Wales family, family always came first, above any royal duties. Unlike Queen Elizabeth and King Charles, who had long prioritised duty above all else, William and Catherine put their loved ones at the centre. This was one of the most challenging times for the royal family, yet they remained united, ensuring the monarchy continued its affairs while secretly hoping for some good news behind the palace walls. 2 months later, the public witnessed King Charles and Queen Camilla attending the Easter Sunday service at St. George's Chapel. The crowd applauded the king's courage and determination to keep working behind the scenes, even while battling illness. Though he was undergoing treatment, Charles continued to appear at selected events and manage his official duties. Insiders later revealed that much of this public presence was for Camilla's sake. She reportedly didn't want them to lose their grip on power or allow Prince William to take on too many royal responsibilities, fearing it might make her husband appear weak before the nation. During Charles's health crisis, Camilla also advised him not to reveal the severity of his condition publicly, believing such transparency would invite criticism and weaken their reign. Her determination to preserve their standing pushed Charles to keep going, showing strength even when his body was failing him. He did everything he could to keep up appearances, but behind the palace walls, his health continued to decline. Royal watchers alleged that King Charles's cancer had not disappeared, but was being carefully managed. This turned out to be true, unlike Catherine, who later announced she was cancer-free and had returned to her royal duties. No such declaration came from the king. No confirmation. No reassurance. Questions about Charles's condition grew louder, yet Buckingham Palace remained silent until he shocked the world with a speech that would change everything. Charles announced that he was abdicating the throne, naming his son and daughter-in-law, Prince William and Princess Catherine, as the nation's future rulers. It was a moment no one had anticipated. Insiders later revealed that Queen Camilla was far from pleased with the decision, but there was nothing she could do. She tried to convince Charles not to make the announcement, but he didn't change his mind. While many knew Prince William was destined to inherit the throne one day, no one expected Charles to abdicate. It was unthinkable. A man who had waited his entire life for the crown stepping down willingly, without giving a full explanation. However, King Charles was not the first royal to abdicate the throne. To understand the weight and shock of this decision, we must look back at another king who similarly changed the course of British history with a bold act, the abdicated king. Edward Albert Christian George Andrew Patrick David was born in 1894 to the Duke and Duchess of York, destined from birth for the throne as the eldest son of King George V and Queen Mary. But fate had other plans, shaped by one bold decision that would forever alter the course of the monarchy. At 16, Edward was made Prince of Wales, just 7 weeks after his father became king. Preparations for his future began immediately. He was pulled from his naval course before graduation and sent to Magdalen College, Oxford, to continue his education. Yet academics never truly captured his interest. Edward left the university after 8 terms without earning a degree, but he did master polo with the university club as a young man. During the First World War, he served in the British Army and undertook several overseas tours on behalf of his father. His charm, charisma, and striking fashion sense quickly made him one of the most admired figures of his era. The media followed him relentlessly, praising his style, modern outlook, and seemingly effortless charm. He stood out from the stiff, formal image that royals usually projected, appearing fresh and approachable. But after the war, Edward began to change. He grew restless, chasing excitement from one social event to the next, keeping company with people who didn't always belong in royal circles. This worried his parents, especially King George, who wanted him to take life more seriously. Yet Edward had made up his mind. He would live by his own rules. He ignored every warning, moving from one romantic affair to another, with his private life soon spilling into the public eye. One of his earliest and most troubling relationships was with a married Parisian woman, Marguerite Abe. Edward was reportedly infatuated, but the affair turned scandalous when Marguerite later shot her husband at the Savoy Hotel. Panic swept through the palace, threatening to tarnish the royal family's reputation. Behind the scenes, the family worked tirelessly to shield Edward from being linked to the murder trial. Edward's romantic escapades didn't stop there. He was also connected to Rosemary Levison Gower, and over time, his list of affairs multiplied, often with married women. This pattern infuriated his father, King George V, who feared Edward lacked the discipline, judgment, and responsibility required to rule. The stakes were high. The heir to the throne seemed determined to live on his own terms, no matter the cost to the monarchy's dignity. The king once warned his advisors that Edward would bring ruin upon himself in less than a year. When he finally took the throne, it quickly seemed that he was not far from the truth. Royal insiders later revealed that King George V privately hoped his second son, Albert, might one day succeed as king, since Edward showed little interest in marriage, steady conduct, or the careful discipline expected of a monarch. Despite his reckless behavior, Edward remained charming and friendly. He often called Albert's wife, Elizabeth, Queen Elizabeth, as if he already sensed that her destiny would one day lead her to the throne. In 1930, King George gave Edward Fort Belvedere, a secluded residence in Windsor Great Park, where he surrounded himself with fashionable guests and continued his notorious affairs with married women. It was during one of these extravagant gatherings that Edward met Wallis Simpson, the woman who would forever change the course of his life, and the monarchy itself. Wallis was an American, married at the time to her second husband, Ernest Simpson, a British businessman. Before that, she had been the wife of a US naval officer, Win Spencer. From the moment Edward laid eyes on Wallis, he was drawn to her energy, wit, and self-assured nature. She was unlike anyone in his circle. Edward and Wallis began spending increasing amounts of time together, and soon their affair became the subject of whispers in both court and government circles. Though the British press never reported on it, King George V suspected the relationship. Edward denied everything, insisting Wallis was just a friend. But when the truth came out, the king was furious, demanding that Edward end the relationship. Edward refused. He even brought Wallis to the palace, but King George refused to receive her and distanced himself from his son. The rift between father and son grew deeper as Edward grew more defiant. Wallis was accused of having undue influence over Edward, and many in high society believed she controlled nearly every decision he made. The thought of an American divorcee with a complicated past holding sway over the heir to the British throne alarmed both the royal household and the government. Their worst fears came true. On January 20th, 1936, King George V died, and Edward ascended the throne as King Edward VIII, stepping into history with controversy already trailing him. The very next day after his ascension, Edward appeared with Wallis Simpson, watching the proclamation of his accession from a window at St. James's Palace. This simple act broke tradition and shocked the nation. Edward didn't stop there. He defied another long-standing custom by ordering that his official coin portrait face the same direction as his father's, rather than the opposite way. He explained it was to show off his hair, but these small gestures symbolized his blatant disregard for centuries of royal convention. Within months, Edward's behavior unsettled ministers. He began involving himself in political matters that were meant to remain far beyond the Crown's influence. Government officials started withholding confidential papers, worried he might casually share sensitive information with Wallis or her guests. The monarchy was entering its most precarious moment in generations, and the worst was still to come. Ministers simply didn't trust Edward, especially with state secrets. A few months into his reign, Edward shocked everyone by making it clear that he intended to marry Wallis Simpson. The announcement stunned politicians, the church, and the public alike. Wallis had already been divorced once and was seeking a divorce from her second husband, making her socially and politically unacceptable as a future Queen Consort. The Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, along with the Dominion governments, strongly opposed the marriage. The Church of England, over which Edward presided as titular head, also firmly opposed the union, since remarriage after divorce while a former spouse was still alive was forbidden. They demanded that Edward step down if he intended to marry Wallis. Edward, however, proposed a compromise. He would remain king, but Wallis would not take the title of Queen Consort, and their children would not inherit the throne. Some senior politicians, including Winston Churchill, found this proposal reasonable, but the British cabinet and Dominion governments rejected it outright. They refused to bend centuries of tradition for Edward. He grew increasingly unhappy with the situation, realizing that pursuing the marriage against government wishes would trigger a political and constitutional crisis. Ministers were prepared to resign rather than support him. After several tense private discussions, Edward confronted Prime Minister Stanley Baldwin. He made it clear that he would rather abdicate than see his love forbidden, refusing to let tradition destroy his personal happiness. Baldwin then laid out 3 grim options. Edward could marry Wallis against his minister's advice and provoke a constitutional crisis, or, if he wanted peace, he would have to walk away from the crown altogether, sacrificing his throne for the woman he loved. Give up the idea of marrying Wallis or abdicate the throne. Edward faced a choice that would change history forever. After careful consideration, he followed his heart and chose Wallis Simpson. He signed the instrument of abdication, declaring that none of his descendants would ever ascend the British throne. Remarkably, Edward's reign lasted only 326 days, making it the shortest in British history. After her divorce was finalised, Edward married Wallis. They never had children, and their marriage lasted until his death. Edward's abdication, however, had huge consequences. His younger brother, Prince Albert, Duke of York, became the next in line. Albert ascended the throne as King George VI, honouring continuity with his father, King George V. This move also made Princess Elizabeth the heir to the throne, since her father had no male heir. When Elizabeth passed away in 2022, Charles became king, and just like his mother before him, it was assumed that upon his eventual death, William would naturally succeed him. But then came the shock. King Charles III announced his own abdication, naming William and Catherine as the nation's future rulers. The story, however, doesn't end there. Prince William's reaction to his father's decision was closely watched around the world. William had always prepared for the crown, taking on increasing responsibilities since his father became king. Yet even he was stunned by the sudden abdication announcement. When asked about his vision for the monarchy, William spoke clearly of his desire to modernize the institution. This wasn't entirely new. He had long expressed the wish to focus more on the smaller R of the royal family and less on the larger, more traditional system. He wanted younger royals to take on meaningful responsibilities, believing they had a better understanding of how to connect with the public. This was a significant shift from the traditional approach, where senior royals carried nearly all duties while younger family members were left in the background with little to do. Many speculated that William's plans were a quiet criticism of King Charles, but the prince denied this. In his own words, his agenda is not rebellion, it's renewal. He seeks change that people can admire and be proud of. William wants progress for the country, not repetition. He doesn't want to do things simply the way they've always been done. He wants to leave a lasting impact that will shape the monarchy for generations to come. William once reflected, "I want to question things more. Are we truly doing everything possible to make the biggest impact we can?" He explained that if you aren't careful, history can feel like a heavy anchor, weighing you down, suffocating you with the past. It's important to live in the here and now, he said. Unlike previous eras when the royal family was constantly caught up in scandals, William has been working to shift headlines toward a more positive, forward-looking monarchy. His approach is not rebellion, it's evolution, a way to show that the royal family can modernize while keeping its dignity intact. Reports also suggest that William does not plan to move into Buckingham Palace full-time. His goal is for the monarchy to have a real, tangible impact on the people, influencing their daily lives in meaningful ways. Yet one detail stands out in all of William's plans for the future. There has been no mention of Queen Camilla, his stepmother, in his vision emphasizing younger royals. It is clear that Camilla will not play an active role in William's reign. This comes as no surprise, given her past involvement in the painful breakdown of his parents' marriage. Even after all these years, it is widely believed that William still carries strong feelings about that chapter of his life. Once William becomes king, Camilla will be quietly moved into the background. She will retain the title of Queen Dowager after King Charles's death, but will not have an active role in the monarchy's future. Still, Camilla is known for her determination and is believed to be making quiet moves to maintain influence. For example, when both Catherine and King Charles were ill, she stepped up to show her capability, taking on extra duties, working tirelessly, and remaining highly visible, all in an effort to prove she could still serve alongside William. Some insiders say she hoped William would see her as relevant to the monarchy's future. Yet royal watchers insist William's plans were already set long before. Reports indicate that when William shared his vision of empowering younger royals with his father, Camilla reacted angrily. She allegedly shouted, objecting to any plan that reduced her role or passed responsibilities to the next generation. Charles tried to persuade William to reconsider, to include more senior royals in the plan, but William reportedly stood firm, unwavering in his vision for a modernized monarchy that prioritized impact, engagement, and the next generation over tradition. This came as a surprise to many, especially since earlier in the year William and Camilla had appeared united, with Charles publicly praising her dedication and service. Yet insiders now believe that display was just for show. Behind closed doors, William's stance has never changed. His vision for the future monarchy simply does not include Camilla. He still carries the weight of his mother's untimely death and the impact it had on his life. While William and Catherine continue to execute their roles as the nation's king and queen, it's remarkable to realize that none of this would have been possible if King Edward VIII had not abdicated decades earlier. That single, bold decision reshaped the line of succession and ultimately paved the way for King Charles, and eventually for William himself. The monarchy's history is full of drama, heartbreak, and personal sacrifices, but the way the line of succession evolved shows how one choice can ripple through generations. William's vision for the monarchy is clearly shaped by history, personal experience, and a desire to modernize the institution while keeping it relevant for the people of today. What do you think of King Charles's decision to abdicate? Do you believe it was a personal choice, a strategic move, or something more complex behind the scenes? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, share it with friends, and subscribe to the channel for more updates. Keep an eye out for the next video popping up on your screen. You won't want to miss it. The monarchy continues to evolve, shaped by bold choices, loyalty, and personal sacrifice. And now, William and Catherine are at the forefront, carrying the legacy forward. one decision at a time. Stay tuned, because the royal story is far from over, and the next chapter is already unfolding.